Good day, everyone. It's been a while. This is Dr. Fundi Nyati, aka Dr. Fundi, the regular host of Health Matters. Today, we are not going to deal with matters of health. Today, we are dealing with education matters, something that is also close to my heart. I'm not alone. I'm with my colleague, Katlego, Faith Mahlangu, who will be playing the role of a ghost. Who will be playing a role of a ghost lady in our podcast. And we have a special guest today to help us navigate matters of education. As you know, my name is Fundi. And so, I come from an environment whereby both of my parents were educators, very passionate about education. So as much as I am a health professional who's passionate about health issues, but I'm as passionate about matters of education. We have a special guest today, and my guest today is my son, Afika Nyati. He'll be helping us to navigate this world of education with a critical eye on the education system generally, globally and also, locally. But let me not steal his thunder. He's got a lot that he wants to share with us. But Afika, please introduce yourself to my audience.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Afika, a.k.a. Dr. Fundi's son. I'm South African, grew up here, studied here. I currently, though, live in the US. I went there for university, and I've been working on my various ventures since there. So I've been there since 2014. And so one of the reasons we decided to come here to talk is that I just spent 4 years writing a book largely around this question of education, specifically on what the education system should look like for the 21st century. And so my dad figured, given that I had one more day left in South Africa, let's sit down, and just unpack this topic. He doesn't know, or he has a high-level view of what I've been doing the last 4 years, but similar to all of you guys, this will be really pretty new for him. And so I'm sure you'll be learning quite a bit. So that's who I am. In terms of my own studies, as I mentioned, I studied in South Africa, initially at primary school in Joburg, St. Stithians, moved to Bishops for high school, had a very, very short stint, about a semester worth at UCT after graduating. And then I went to MIT, which is in the US, Boston, where I studied electrical engineering and computer science. And so that is not education. And so as my dad mentioned, we come from a family of educators. And so funny enough, I somehow found myself going into the family business after years of trying to figure out how I want to apply my own skills. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Just on that issue of a family business, my dad, being maybe the third or fourth generation teacher, said to us, me and my siblings, guys, we've produced enough teachers in this family. I would want you guys to go and, follow other careers. All right? I respect teaching. There's nothing against, being a teacher. I am one. That's what he was talking about himself. But I would like you guys to just venture into other professions. But the funny thing, yes, we did venture into the different professions. I'm a medical doctor. Two of my brothers are engineers. My sister is a physiotherapist. We've got lawyers as well in the family. But the funny thing is that we've become teachers or educators within the professions that we've chosen. So I always say somehow that thing of being teachers has followed us into the different profession. Now it's worse than that. My son is also being a computer engineer, but he is actually coming up with solutions that have to do with teaching. I don't know how that happens, but anyway, we believe it was part of the bigger plan. All right, Afika. So you've already introduced yourself and the space you are in. One of the things that made me to insist that before you go back to New York, we should have a chat. Just about a fortnight ago, we as South Africans, we had to go through, I would say, the process of trying to make sense of the results of the National Senior Certificate, which is where the majority of learners are, and also the IEB, where a minority of learners are. And there was a contrast between the two, the IEB, almost 90% pass and everything. And here we're talking quality passes. And then in the public, system, NSC, about 88% pass rate. But here we're talking quantity. Not necessarily quality. Because when you then look at quality, then it's actually maybe even less than, if you look at people with bachelor passes, that was less than 50%. Only one province in the country managed to have majority of the candidates getting a bachelor pass. That is KwaZulu-Natal, followed by the Western Cape at 49%. So that does not really, inspire confidence. At least the majority of the provinces should have produced, I think, people at bachelor level, in the majority. And so whilst people are said to have passed, but they are struggling to gain admission at tertiary institutions, because those passes, for many of them, they are not enough in the competitive world of trying to gain entry to limited spaces at tertiary. All right, so all of those things have been bothering me. I've been posting about some of these on Facebook. And so I thought, you know what, as much as you are a South African, you are here on vacation, but you could maybe give us a different view, coming as somebody who is on the outside, looking, inwards. Not necessarily to just be critical, but also to look at what needs to be done.
I mean, most of my last 4 years was trying to look for solutions. But just to, I guess, jump off the point you made, I spend most of my time outside of the SA. And so when I do come here, one of the things I try to get a sense of is where things are. And so you might remember, but I think maybe last year, I had asked your own views on the unemployment rate amongst the youth, which I think is like 60%.
It's very high. It's definitely over 50%.
And so that to me was worrying as a potential ticking time bomb, because if that's not sorted now, that's at some point that's going to blow. We don't know in what way, but it's definitely not a good sign. More on the more recent results. I matriculated in 2013, so that's I think 13 years. But in those 13 years, pretty much not much has changed. It seems as though the same issues that existed back then exist now, and so it doesn't necessarily inspire much confidence on basically overcoming some of these issues that have existed even as far back as then. And so those are maybe two things that, for me, coming from the outside, I'm like, okay, this definitely is an issue here. So yeah, and I think going on the point you made around the marks themselves, I think we touched on in that conversation we had how it seems a lot of schools are maybe incentivized towards passing students versus necessarily quality passes, to your point. And so while on the short term it might put together a very nice image of where the education system is, long term it does not necessarily lead to, I would say, good outcomes. I think you as a employer, I think one thing I've noticed is there's a bit of a gap between the skills that students have and the skills that the employers actually
looking
need
for
to
yes.
then apply them in the jobs. And so clearly there's a bit of a shortfall. And so, I mean, a lot of these things just tie into really the main question around just, there's things we need to improve on the system we have currently.
Yeah, I mean, Kat, I think just get ready to just give your take on what we've just spoken about so far. But I mean, if I look at about 920,000 students that wrote last year, in 2025, only 28%, all right, 254,000 wrote maths proper. That's less than a third. Maths literacy, just over half, 52%, wrote maths literacy. So there seems to be more people who are opting to do maths literacy than doing maths proper. Physical sciences, 22% of people wrote. That's about 205,000 out of 920. Life sciences, 42% at 382,000. So just looking at those four, that worried me that we seem to be moving away from some of subjects that we normally just put them under the umbrella of STEM subjects, so as a country, and when you look at the pass rates, and here I'm talking 30% and above, with maths it was 64%, but 64% from 30%, maths literacy 86%, because it's less challenging, really. Physical sciences, 77% pass from 30%. And life sciences as well. I just couldn't get the percentage there. So this worries me. Yeah. I'm worried about this. I'm worried about the fact that, as a country, I've heard stories about schools that actually coerce students to change to maths literacy. Yeah. So that they can be able to get good marks or good pass. And so if you are struggling with maths, then they coerce you to go for maths literacy. Yeah. And what the long-term impact of that. So, Kat, what's your take on this?
I just want to revert back to what Afika mentioned, right, about the issue of unemployment rate in South Africa.
Yes.
And it just also goes back to how there's a lot of loopholes even in the way that the government system is built, right? Because the failure in, like, for example, the alleviation of youth unemployment, it stems from also the lack of the substantial education system, right? So our education system doesn't also equip people with the skills to create and innovate, So I think we'll get into it as we speak more on, the solutions. Yeah.
Yes. All right. So moving on, Fika.
Yeah.
From where you're sitting.
Yeah.
What What's your sense of the education system, both from a South African and also from a global context? We said we are here to just talk about the education system.
Yeah.
All right? Locally, but also globally. You've had the opportunity to look at things locally as much as you've had the opportunity, and you spent over a decade now in the US. And there you've interacted with people from China, from India, from Singapore, from the US, from Europe. So you got a sense of how things are. So my first question, therefore, is what are the issues that have to do with the education system that are of concern to you?
So I'll definitely answer that. I do want to, though, jump to the STEM thing we're talking about. Specifically, you're talking about math lit and then regular math and essay. I mean, it's unsurprising that a lot of the teachers would push students towards math lit just because for them, the thing that matters is pass rate. And so to your point, math lit is easier, and so it makes sense to kind of do that. But maybe tying towards the question you asked.
Yes.
One of the things I had realized, having studied math in South Africa and then eventually going to a prestigious university such as MIT, was to some extent, despite me feeling as though I knew math, in certain other ways I felt as though I didn't. And so even I realized that, or I felt as though that having gone through the best of the essay system, there were parts of that didn't quite, I would say, expose me to broadly what math actually is. And so that's maybe one question we can touch more into. But that's not just an essay issue. That's actually a global issue.
Can you can you just repeat this?
I realized, having gone to, let's say, the the epitome of where one would study math, like MIT, which is a Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
Yes.
I realized, okay, I personally, even having done well in math through school, felt as though I didn't actually have a good relation to this subject. And so I slowly realized, okay, I don't actually know what math is, which led me to realize, okay, there's actually an issue around how we frame what mathematics is. And I think part of that leads to why people don't do well in it and why they don't enjoy it.
Yes.
And so that's one thing that I realized, I guess, going into other parts of the world, being exposed to other mathematicians or people specifically that studied math. And so I didn't study math myself, but when I did meet people who decided to study mathematics, it's interesting to, when you listen to them and they described what math was, they would use words like beauty or like elegance. And so
talking about maths.
Yeah. And so for me, I normally reserve those words to describe art.
Yes.
Or music, music, it's this is a beautiful song. And so that was initially, I'm like, okay, I don't think we're looking at the subject in the same way. I've normally seen it as a problem-solving tool, but you've kind of seen it in this more romantic a way. And so that was maybe one of the things that set me on this path that I ultimately went down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just a point, maybe just for clarity for me. You also did advanced maths.
Yeah.
All right. What is that? Because I know it's normally a handful of people who do that.
Yeah.
All right. You did advanced maths over and above the maths that many people are running from. So what is advanced maths and how do you think it has benefited you?
So AP Math basically is additional math, as the name suggests. And so they tack on a couple extra subjects or topics in math over and above what's taught in the math, I would say, curriculum, the normal math curriculum. What I found, though, or at least one thing that's maybe personally, when I dug deeper into what is math question, is even with AP Math, I was still learning things that were very, very old. And so if you look at like math as a profession and the profession of creating mathematics, like
Yes.
actually creating new ideas, the standard curriculum will end with generally with like maybe a little bit of calculus.
Yeah.
So calculus was invented or discovered. Mathematicians tend to move between the two, but in 1600 with your Isaac Newtons and your those folks. And so if you look at the question of like what mathematics is being taught, there's about 400 years of mathematics that the current system is not teaching.
So, Afika, so obviously our conversation today is about the education system broadly. We will zoom into some specific things, but we're looking at you giving us your insights, more outsider view, as somebody who has spent now the past 13 years or so outside of the country. You were here when the results, were released, both IEB, both and National Senior Certificate. The politicians celebrated an 88% pass, which is the highest ever from a quantity of people, 30% and above. But when you zoom in into quality issues, you start to worry. If we just, for example, look at the people with bachelor passes, only one province out of 9 provinces managed to have more than 50%, specifically 52% of bachelor passes. Right? That was KwaZulu-Natal. Followed closely from a quality point of bachelor passes, followed closely by Western Cape at 49%. Right? The rest of the provinces basically struggled to have bachelor passes. My home province of Eastern Cape, I think it fared quite low there, in terms of the quality of bachelor passes. That is the percentage. So, and yet when you compare the IEB, where less than 20,000 students wrote, and all the bachelor passes of 90% and sometimes 100% in terms of the totality, but that's only about 20,000 students or so. And then you've got, on the other hand, the public system, the National Senior Certificate. 920,000 students wrote. And you look at the quality, whether you're looking at math, where just less than a third actually wrote. That's 28% wrote math. 52% wrote math lit. All right. 22% did physical sciences. All right. And 42% did life sciences. Now, those are some of the subjects that are normally referred to when we talk STEM subjects, So that worried me. As a parent, worried me as a South African who sees the high percentage of unemployed graduates, a high percentage of people who drop out at tertiary. So from where you are sitting, from your vantage point, what are you seeing?
So, I think one of the questions when you look at just the results is to ask, what is the system like optimizing for? So what are the teachers and the principals and all driving towards? And one of the things maybe implicitly you've talked about is the pass rate. And so how many of the students who are going into or who are writing end up being able to get a bachelor's pass, or well, that's the higher end of this, to then go to university. And so clearly, if that's the only goal, there's things you can do to kind of play with the system to make sure that that number gets higher. And so I think one of the ways that happens is by kind of pushing people away from some of the more technical subjects towards things that are maybe less technical, so that that doesn't affect their pass mark. But I will say, even that alone as a goal of the system, maybe it's not quite sufficient. So ultimately, education being described as the thing to get you from high school to university, I think is a little underbaked. I think ultimately it should be trying to prepare various students towards whatever they want to do afterwards. And so clearly I think if you use that as the goal, there's ways in which the system is just not failing, or is failing many students, even the ones that are passing. I think one of the things that when I speak to employers, yourself included, is there's a sense in which even the people then that go to university, graduate, and then enter into the workforce, there's a sense in which there's still a bit of a gap between what they're capable of doing and what the employers want them to be able to do. And so clearly that's a failure of the various system as a whole. And so, I mean, that, to your point, has led to this South Africa, this huge unemployment rate amongst the youth, which I think is, I mean, personally, when I look from the outside in, is a bit of a ticking time bomb. Like, I'm a bit worried about what that will result in maybe 20 years from now, when these various people aged 20 to, let's call it mid-30s, enter into the latter stage of their lives where they've been the issue is just like got much worse. And so I don't know what that turns into, but it's definitely quite worrying for me. And so I mean, there's a lot of things.
Can I just add a point with regards to what he said? So a lot of the times it's because, it's like in varsity. I'm going to make an example with varsity. There's so much theory. It's like the way that we are being taught is just chalk and talk. So you don't get to sort of interact and test and trial what you've just studied and what you have processed in your brain. You are just getting fed with information, right? That by the time you graduate, you don't even know how to apply the very same information in a pragmatic manner. Like, you don't know how to apply whatever that you studied in the workforce. And I think it just goes back to show that there is just something missing. There's that loophole in how the education system is structured. No,
I totally agree with that. I think, so I did write a book on what I think are the issues with the education system. And so I think one of the issues, and tying to what you just said, is when you ask the question of what is the goal of education, I think the one that we necessarily subscribe to now isn't quite ideal for the world we live in. And so for the most part, it is you go through education to get a specific job within some specific set of jobs that exist in the year in which you decided that's the one I want to do. Increasingly, that's becoming less of a good goal, partly because we don't quite know what jobs will exist 20 years from now. I think there's a lot of change happening in the world. And so saying, okay, I want to study this, I'm going to learn these things to, I don't know, become a civil engineer 20 years from now. Might be the case that civil engineering, as you know, it doesn't exist. And so one of the things I personally have been thinking about is, what is a more ideal goal or purpose for education? And so tying to that question, I think one of the things, or I'll give you like the whole tagline, I think it should be a system that cultivates agency within individuals to help them to then pursue their individual and collective interests. And so there's like three big words there.
Yeah.
One of them is agency. And so that kind of ties to what you're saying, which is for the most part, the system today is more about what ideas or knowledge should we put into someone's head and less about what capabilities should this person have after they go through the system. And so they're somewhat related,
Yeah, but
but if you